Welcome in, Hawks fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another Believe in Hawks episode. It's been a minute since the dropped episode. Had a busy week last week, but I have been keeping up and watching everything that's been happening with our Hawks, which is not great right now. Continuing that tonight with them losing to Dallas tonight, 129-119 in Atlanta. A lot of people unhappy right now with where the team is, the play of the team, especially with getting everybody back. The situations, no Luka, no Clay. They just came off an overtime game last night. This is the second of a back-to-back, and to come out with the way they did and lose the game the way they did, I think for a lot of people really is frustrating. And it is, but it's also, we have to take into context where this team is, and maybe the expectations that we have for this team that some of you have maybe need to be lowered. Because there's some things going on that's different and changing, and there's some things going on that you have every right to be upset about. So there's nobody, I think, right now, like, that's in like a majorly wrong standpoint, but I think there has to be context applied. And so I'll try to imply the context in this episode about what's happening right now with the team. And just obviously, this is my viewpoint. So like I said, there's other great podcasters in this community that you can also get their viewpoints from as well. But this is just for me, for the Believe in Hawks podcast, how I view things. So like I said, just dive into it. Hawks, 2 days off, right? Took off the weekend, fresh, healthy, right? Everybody's back. Played Dallas, like I said, overtime game, down a couple of players, right? A lot of people are upset the Hawks could not win this game tonight. And if you watch this game, especially in that first quarter, Hawks started off really well. Dallas came back. Hawks ended the half really well. Dallas came back. The Dallas goes on to win, and they just take control of the game. And this has been a common theme for the team this season, where they have these moments, especially against bad teams. And I think that's what's making this season so frustrating so far for a lot of people, is that the Hawks have had moments where they are in control of games, and all they have to do is just continue to play just an average level of basketball, and then they just go off a cliff. And then it's just like, what just happened? Like the Blazers game is one of the primest examples. You have pretty much controlled that game, and then in the third quarter, Blazers go on like a 22-2 run, and now they're leading. And now you're fighting with them, and you couldn't win at the end. And tonight you had multiple leads. You had, I think, a 10-point lead in the first half at some point, and then you had a 10-point lead at the beginning of the third before Dallas came back. So you had opportunities where you were playing the way you should have played. And there were moments tonight where you saw really good crisp basketball, really good ball movement, good open created shots, and they were making them, and it was like, okay, this is the Hawks basketball that Quinn is probably envisioning for this team. And then you see just when they're losing the lead and they let Dallas back into the game, the basketball that has really cost them. And the only difference from tonight, I think, compared to the other games, is a lot of the other losses they had. One of the big issues the Hawks have had is turnovers. They turn the ball over a lot. They turn over. That has been a big issue. This game really wasn't about turnovers for me. It was about, first, shooting, because that is a glaring hole in this team, is the shooting. And technically, they were a better shooting team with the injuries, because you had Larry Nance, who was shooting at a high clip, and Garrison Matthews, right? So you kind of had more of some shooters on the floor, right? The Hawks were shooting the three better with injuries than they are right now with everybody back, which is an issue. But it was a concern that people had coming into the season. But also tonight, really through the majority of the game, it felt like the defense was bad, especially in that first half. The defense wasn't bad. The defensive rating was fine. But at the end of the game, you led up basically 130 points to a Luka-less, Clay-less Dallas Mavericks team. And the thing is, too, is we've talked about the three-point shooting, how teams are just having great nights against the Hawks from three. It's guys who are coming into these games not shooting the three ball well at all, and then they just get on track against the Hawks. And people have been all over Twitter. People in the Hawks Twitter have been trying to dissect the stats and numbers and saying, okay, well, like the different types of analytics on threes. Well, the Hawks, a lot of teams are shooting. There was a stat I think I saw that there are 3 teams who are letting up as many threes or a certain percentage of threes as the Hawks are. But the difference, okay, actually that's cap. So I think there are 2-3 teams that are allowing the same type of 3-point shots off as the Hawks, but their percentages with them are much lower than the Hawks. So I guess it's like if it's contested 3, let's say the Hawks have the same percentage of contested threes as these other 2 teams, but the other 2 teams have a lower number. So basically teams are not hitting the shots against them, but they're hitting them against the Hawks. And people are just like, well, I mean, what is it? Is it that our 3-point defense is that bad? Is it like, what is it that's allowing teams to just hit threes? Why do the Hawks have such bad luck against teams when it comes to shooting threes, right? But tonight, I think that the lack of threes, like I mentioned, was a big problem because really tonight's game really told you if this is the rotation they're going to roll out, Bogey is extremely important to this roster. Extremely important. Because he is the way he's the only guy who will take mid-ranges. Legitimately, he's the only guy who will take a mid-range shot. Like, they've sharply cut them down and other guys take them, but Bogey will take shots if he feels like he has a good look, right? He also showed you he can drive to the rim. He also can hit the 3 ball. He scores at all 3 levels. And he's kind of the only Hawk who does it the way he does it, right? Just because of how Quinn wants to play. And so Bogey needs to be hitting threes. Bogey basically needs to be scoring, especially right now with where they are, because Trey's not having monster offensive games right now. He's kind of been in the teens, low 20s a lot of games recently. We know he's been dealing with the Achilles. A lot of people feel like that slowed him down. His quickness and explosiveness wasn't there. Tonight, he seemed a little bit more back to normal from that perspective, but he still wasn't like Trey took 12 shots tonight. But I feel like he wasn't that aggressive because that's 4th. He took the 4th most amount of shots tonight. Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, and Bogey took more shots than Trey. And when I watch them, I'm like, I feel like even though he has the high assist numbers, I need Trey to be more aggressive offensively, I feel like. Because I think the thing is that teams game plan for you. Teams know you're the person that they're most scared of getting off the most. And if Trey is not assertive offensively, teams are basically going to be like, oh, okay, well, if he's not going to be assertive, we can now maybe take our defense and now focus on the other guys that they're trying to get involved in the offense, because the Hawks are trying to create an offensive system where they are able to get production from other guys and not just Trey. What really is supposed to happen is that it's supposed to make everybody a threat, but also create easier opportunities for Trey Young. And right now we haven't seen that. And I know Wes, Repeatry Hoops has mentioned that like he feels like the Hawks have high turnovers in the restricted area because spacing. It seems that way. And I told him, I was like, that's probably a part of the adjustments of ball movement because they're trying to create ball movement. But the problem is when you're cutting sometimes, especially because a lot of their passes in those areas are already kind of in the restricted area, and then you're having someone cut into the restricted area, you're bringing a defender into the restricted area, which condenses the spacing. And now you have to make sharp, crisp passes where when you saw this game, if you watch the Dallas game, when they had those runs, it was wide open lanes to the basket they were finding. And so it was easy shots. And that's the type of offense that they're really trying to generate more often. But that's something that they're unable to do consistently. And then on top of that, you have a lot of young players entering a new role and a new, just new stuff. Because one of the biggest debates that people have had about this Hawks team is is this a development year? Are they trying to compete? Are they trying to win? Like people have really sat there and been like, what is this Hawks team's goals this year? I think a lot of people in the content creator circle has said the Hawks are trying to develop. That's really what they're trying to do. But a lot of, I think, people who watch the team think, well, if Trey's playing and Bogey's playing and they're trying to win games. And so then there's this clash, I think, within the community at times about when we watch a game like this, should we be mad? Because if we're developing, you won't be as mad. But if we're trying to win, you're going to be really mad. And so it's like, well, which one are we doing here? Are the Hawks trying to do both? I know people hate that answer. But you have young guys like Ricochet, Buffkin, Dyson taking on obviously a new role, Jalen taking on a new role, Okongwu, which I'll get to in a minute. Okongwu, he takes a step. And, I think all of those things are creating this unknowingness of like, okay, what should I honestly expect from this version of the Atlanta Hawks? Right? Like Kobe, let's just talk about him for a second. Like Kobe really hasn't done anything crazy since he's back. A lot of people have been very hard on Kobe since he's been back. They've been very critical. A lot of people think he cannot be a point guard. He's more of a two guard. I've seen some people say that they like to see Kobe and Trey play together on the floor, which I would not mind either. They did that with Keaton Wallace. They played him with Trey at the 2. They haven't really done that. I'm assuming just because Bogey's back, that's why they're not doing it. But, they've done some things that Kobe has done some things where it's like, all right, you can kind of see what they like. Because really what you liked about Kobe was his defensive prowess and, his ability to, he's someone who talks on defense, someone who communicates, looks like he has a good IQ for the game. But, offensively is where he has to make his biggest strides. And then especially because the Hawks have been losing a lot of the non-Trey minutes since he's been back. So obviously you're going to reflect that off of him since he's the backup point guard in that situation and be like, man, we are struggling while Trey's off the floor, because that's when teams make runs on the Hawks or are able to close gaps, especially is when Trey is off the floor. I think Brad Rowland posted a stat. When Traylon and Jay are playing, they are really good. When Jalen and Trey are off the floor, they're really bad. And so right now, if you're the Hawks, you're kind of dependent on certain players. And so Quinn and them are trying to figure out how can we maintain a level of play when we have to rest those guys, right? I mean, and then Kobe's a big part of that from the trade spot view of things. And, and again, Kobe's not playing like a crap ton of minutes. Kobe has been one of the least minute getters since coming back. He played 13 tonight. I mean, he had 4, 4, and 4 tonight. Wasn't bad, but again, it's not like he's getting a bunch of time either. Ricochet. I mean, Ricochet had the second highest plus minus tonight, and he only played 17 minutes. And I know a lot of people have been asking, why is Ricochet playing so few minutes? Which has been an interesting question to me. Why? I would think Ricochet should be playing 20 minutes a game, realistically. And then that's where you question what I mentioned. Okay, so are they trying to win? Because they're not playing Ricochet more minutes? You see what I'm saying? There's not a clear direction here. But I also think that's dictated on Quinn basically saying, if Ricochet don't got it going that night, I'm going to go with the guy I like, the more trusted player, which is DeAndre Hunter. Which DeAndre Hunter didn't have a good game tonight. 3 of 11 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3. This is probably one of Hunter's worst games tonight. And that really hurt the Hawks, especially again with not being able to hit threes. You basically right now have your first pick who can't hit threes consistently, and Hunter who was, and now he can't. So again, this adds to the overall shooting issue they have. But we always say Rishi does some good things, but I mean, Quinn's kind of sending a message that we just need him to grow. I think he had comments before the game too about it. He was just like, it's been a pleasure to coach him. He's 19 years old, and we have to keep that in mind. He is a 19-year-old kid. This man's not 22, played 4 years in college. This man is 19 and will be 19 till April. Very, very young player. Very, very raw player. And they think that he has a very high ceiling. But they're not going to rush his development. That is one thing about this regime I will say, regardless of how you feel, they do not rush things. They have not rushed things. And I know that's pissed some people off because you want some things rushed, but they have not rushed things. And Rishi Shea is another guy they have not rushed in that prime of examples, right? So, you're hoping for him. I mean, Dyson had a pretty decent game tonight, 17 points, 2 assists. He shot 50% from the field, 2 blocks, 2 steals. I mean, for the most part, he did a good job on Kyrie. Kyrie's Kyrie, but Dyson pretty much had a good game tonight, especially bouncing back from his last game, which wasn't that great. Jalen, through this entire stretch, Jalen's consistently, I think, gotten us 30. Last game he had 25. Tonight he had 28. Right? Warriors, he led us scoring with 15. Jalen has been good. In terms of just his performances, he's been good. Jalen has been a good player for them. Bounced back from the beginning of the year. Can't really, listen, we can nitpick him, but he's pretty much done his job. He has been the leading scorer for the Hawks the last 3 games. And I haven't looked at the other ones. He might have been 4 or 5 games leading the team in points, which is good, but is also bad because that means if he has 24, Trae Young, who's supposed to be your leading point getter, is getting less than that, which I've talked about at the beginning of the video. We need more from Trae offensively. But, Jalen's been good. And then Okongwu, Okongwu, a lot of people have been coming to terms with Okongwu recently. A lot of people have been saying, oh, God, Okongwu may truly just not be a starting center. And for the people who believe that from the get-go, I guess pat yourself on the back, right? Okongwu has not been good. Because here's the thing between the 2 centers. If you're the Hawks, this is what you were envisioning. Capella, you're better defensively. You rebound the ball. You can protect the rim better. Okongwu, you can score. The offense is better. He can score the ball better. The issue with Okongwu the last few games is Clint's been outscoring him first. Second, because Okongwu hasn't played well offensively, if you're the Hawks, the reason why he would finish a game is because he's playing well offensively. Realistically, is why he's finishing games. And Okongwu struggling offensively makes him unplayable late because basically he's a smaller center who's not scoring the ball. So if you're Quinn, you're like, I can't play him late. So Clint has been having to finish games. And tonight they had to finish with Jalen Johnson at the 5 because literally both of your centers tonight were not someone you came out of that game when you got to that point when you were Quinn and said, I can go with this center tonight. They had to go with Jalen because they needed Bogey because Bogey was one of your biggest pluses tonight. Bogey was one of your biggest pluses tonight. So you had to go 5, to basically go to 5 guys that with no center. And I think the center position, as some people have said at times, has been a bit of a disaster for them. And a lot of people have questioned, should they have taken Alex Sarr? Should they have taken Klingon? Should they have maybe been more aggressive for a center? Because they said, listen, Okongwu's a good backup center, but he's not a starting center. And if that's how the Hawks view it, if that's the conclusion they come to, then yeah, you got to go get a center because you need something better than Clint. You need a center who can impact the game on both ends. Like Daniel Gafford for Dallas, great rebounder, shot blocker, and hey, listen, he doesn't have some offensive bag, but he's great around the rim. Putbacks, dunks, great in alleys, great off the pick and roll. So he can get you 12, 14, 15 points just off that. And you're like, oh, and Clint could do that too, but like, you know, that's not offensively, that's not his game. And so because of Okongu's lack of offense, that has kept him off the floor and has really hurt the Hawks because again, you're losing size and what you're expecting to get in return, which is scoring, you aren't getting. So you're actually getting a negative when he's on the floor, which has been hurting this team. And then people were sitting here wondering, why is Larry Nance not playing? And listen, I agree. Larry Nance should be playing right now. Like, because I'm sitting here and I'm like, Quinn, like he literally has been your best 3-point shooting big, which is one thing I think this team needs desperately is a big who can stretch the floor. And Okongwu is just not going to be that, probably. He can hit it every blue moon, but he's not going to be a good percentage 3-point shooter as of currently right now. But Larry Nance was. And people are looking at like, you may need to start playing Larry Nance then, Quinn. Like you have like this is where Quinn has to show, okay, guys are struggling. Larry has played well for us this year. Maybe I need to give him the rock, give him some run, give him the ability to play and see what that looks like. I know it doesn't look good if because the thing is, he did it where he played all like literally Nance could just play some 4 because I notice in his subs he'll have the Hunter coming at 4, and I'm just kind of like, I really would rather just Nance coming at 4 and then you put Hunter at 3. I don't like Hunter at 4. I know what he's trying to do because he wants the spacing, because he wants Hunter to kind of help with spacing, but it's like, why not Larry Nance? Like, if I'm Quinn, that's something I need to be looking at Larry Nance playing. Because if not, I'm with everybody else too. Larry Nance probably needs to be traded if that's the case. Because what's the point of having a guy that you have claimed on record and said he is an NBA rotation player who should be playing? Like, Quinn, you can make that. You do realize you're the head coach. You can make that happen. But then again, that's where it goes back to, are they developing? Is that why Nance isn't playing? You see the dilemma here. Certain decisions being made, and you're like, so are you trying to win? Or are you developing? And it's something that I think is going to be talked about in multiple Hawks circles for the entire season. I expect this team to probably play better the second half of the season because they're a young team, and usually young teams play better once they've played more games under their belt. So a lot of the guys who are getting these opportunities right now that we've mentioned are going to have way more reps, obviously, by that point. And so there should be a mark of improvement. If there isn't, then you have to reevaluate as a staff. Okay, this guy hasn't made the strides he wanted. Do we still think he can? Is there something we could do better? Or do we need to potentially start looking in a different direction? Landry Fields this past weekend was at an Ace Bailey game for Rutgers. I think Kyle Korver was there as well. And, people are like, well, why are they scouting him? They don't have a pick that high. Listen, Hawks probably weren't expected to be the top pick in the draft this past year. That's why they were like, oh, shoot, we got to do more film on Ricochet. They're like, well, listen, if the Lakers ended up being bad, if the Kings end up not making the postseason or, whatever, you may be able to sit there and say, well, there may be a chance we get into the top 3 again. And we need to keep looking at potential players, especially in the draft class that's considered very strong this year. Hey, we have to start looking at some guys that maybe we, if they had an opportunity to be drafted by us, we got to look and do our due diligence. So I think what we've seen with this team has just been a lot of up and down play, inconsistencies, lack of shooting, a lot of people were pissed because of the circumstances that Dallas had coming into this game. Because the one thing about this game, too, that also is crazy is that the reason why Dallas stayed in this game is just in the moments where the Hawks seem to have control. Dallas would have a player, whether that was Najee Marshall, Spencer Dinwiddie, whoever, Hardy. They would just get hot for like a couple of minutes. That would keep them in the game. And then they hung around. Then Kyrie finally got hot in the fourth quarter. And then they were able to run away with it because of that. And that has been an Achilles heel for the Hawks. Is that in a lot of these games that they seem to have control of or have moments where they're like, oh yeah, they're the better team. They just have these stretches of just something going wrong, and then that kills them, and then they're losing the game. A lot of Hawks fans feel like the Hawks should have a winning record right now. And that's, I think, also what's adding to the frustration within the fan base. Because you're trying to figure out, why are we unable to close these games out? But at the same time, I mentioned this. The Hawks play like a young team. They play like a young team. Young teams are extremely inconsistent, and that's exactly how the Hawks are playing. Like an extremely inconsistent young team who's trying to figure it out. New offense, new players, and new roles. So you can make an argument that what we have seen should be expected. Because if they didn't do these things, that would probably mean these players and the system is further along. But clearly there's a lot of work that has to be done. And I know a lot of people are going to start questioning, how long does Quinn have? How much leash is Landry Fields giving him? Because people are like, Quinn didn't come here, right, to just rebuild. He came here to try to be competitive, right? And again, that goes to the question of, are they going to compete? Or are they trying to just develop, right? So it's one of those things, man, where the Hawks right now are not looking great. You got Cleveland coming up twice. Technically the best record in the game. Obviously, Friday is the big one in meaningfulness because that the Hawks win that and the Bulls lose because they play Celtics on Friday. Or they could lose to the Wizards if Wizards gave them a gift. The Hawks would actually advance. Yes, the Hawks would advance in the NBA Cup and get out of the group stage. And then they would be playing for a chance to get to Las Vegas. So I've kind of always predicted this week we're losing Cleveland probably, and then hope that they can pull it out at home against Cleveland on Friday. But, I mean, the way they're playing right now, Cleveland will probably beat us both games. But we'll have to see. Every night is a different night. Any team can get beaten on any given night. So we can't just assume that they won't. But I understand morale is probably very low right now in Hawks circles. And I get it. And, I had a fan ask me, why do you even bother with the podcast with this team? And I'm just like, listen, bro, you got to cover this team through thick and thin. Like, I always say, if anybody watching this wants to do this, do a podcast, be a journalist, you're not always going to be covering winning teams. You're going to cover some bad seasons and some bad teams. And I honestly think that helps you grow the most as a journalist, as a podcaster, or whatever you want to be. Because you're basically dealing with adversity too, because it's like, this isn't fun to cover. But at the same time, this is your best chance to provide great context, a way of saying, this is how I'm seeing things. You have to break it down a little bit deeper than maybe the average fan of the game. And that's why through it all, even with the losses, I'll still cover the team. I'll still give my thoughts. I'll still give you my recaps. I'll still give you my reviews. I'll still tell you what's going on with the squad. I'll still tell you, if there's some things I like, if there's things I don't like. I'm not going to sit up here and just say everything is bad, because there are some good things the Hawks are doing. But that's where I think the frustration comes in, because it's like, if they could just do that good better, they would be in a better spot. So obviously we'll have to see what happens moving forward. Obviously a 4-game week coming up. They play Cleveland Friday, then Saturday they play in a back-to-back against the Charlotte Hornets. So we'll see how this week goes for the Hawks. Obviously, regroup from this game, get ready for Cleveland, and we'll see how things end up working out for the team. Obviously, guys, if you have thoughts on the game, about this team, whatever you feel like, leave your comments down below. Always open comment section for you guys. So, yeah, we'll have to see because, like I said tonight, Hawks did great from the 2-point line, but that 3-ball really killed them tonight. 3-ball really killed them tonight. And like I said, giving up 130 points without Luka and Clay, not a great look either. So, especially you're coming off 2 days rest and they're supposed to be tired, it's not a good look for the Hawks. And so I understand why a lot of people aren't happy right now. But I think that's all I got for you guys tonight on the Believe in Hawks podcast. I appreciate you guys tuning into the pod. If you enjoyed this episode, definitely subscribe to the channel, YouTube, Bryce_2K. Leave a comment, like the video. If this is audio, leave a rating or review. Very much appreciated. 5 stars if possible. And yeah, so we'll see. And obviously, guys, if you want to follow me on Twitter at Brycey_2K, BRICY_2K, you can follow me up there as I give takes on our team, as I try to live tweet games when I can, if I'm not working, and just give my thoughts on what's happening with our Atlanta Hawks. But I think that's about it for me today. It's your boy Bryce Lewis. See you next time.